So we've seen some news lately, some leaks rather. I guess we'll probably find out more at PulseCon, as I'm filming this before PulseCon happens, about the future of the Studio Series line. If you haven't seen by now, it's been leaked that we're getting figures, presumably from the War for Cybertron video games, in the Studio Series line. It's been leaked that there's a Bumblebee, a Barricade in the Deluxe class, and then a Voyager class Optimus Prime, and a Voyager class Megatron. And I think that's really, really neat because I love those games. I love all the designs from those games. I think they're some of the best Transformers designs, not just in the past 10 years, but of all time. I think they're great. But this got me thinking as to, are we really running out of stuff to put in the Studio Series line? And what we could kind of do, by we, obviously, I mean Hasbro, what they could do for the future of Studio Series if they're going to start moving into games, sort of what else this can evolve into. Because, you know, Studio Series started as a line dedicated to updating and making the most accurate versions of characters that were featured in films. That's what they said originally when they announced it back in I guess they announced it 2017 and it started dropping in 2018. So where are we going now? I mean, we've had the line for a few years and looks like they might be running out of characters to make in the Bayverse world, which obviously is not true. There's a lot that they haven't hit. So this is going to be a little bit of a different video than normal. Not really ranking, not really reviewing, just kind of spewing thoughts about where I want to see the Studio Series go, and then open up the conversation to you guys as well, and tell me what you guys want out of Studio Series as well, because I love the Studio Series, and I don't want the Studio Series to end anytime soon, because I think it's great. I love everything we've gotten out of it, from the Bayverse stuff. I was hesitant when they were going to introduce 86 stuff because I didn't want, Studio Series had stayed so pure from G1, and that's what I wanted, that I was nervous that now G1 was beginning to infect the line that was made for not G1 stuff. But I think the 86 stuff has turned out really, really well. It's given some fantastic figures like the Dinobots, Hot Rod, and I can't really fault them. They know G1 stuff is the stuff that's going to sell, so of course it was going to make its way in eventually. But I also love the 86 movie. The 86 movie is one of my favorite movies of all time, so I'm a little bit of a sucker, and sure, maybe that sounds hypocritical, but so, yeah, this is going to be a little bit different. You made it this far so far. If you like what you see, go ahead and leave me a like. If you want to talk Transformers and all kind of other action figures with me, and stay tuned for all the future content I've got planned for you, go ahead and hit subscribe as well. It doesn't mean you any harm, and it means a lot to me. So here's what I'm kind of thinking for what they could do, right? First of all, they need to make the rest of the Age of Extinction Dinobots. I know a lot of people are not the biggest fan of the Dinobots design from Age of Extinction. Me personally, I've always loved it. I always thought it was a really neat concept, and I've loved the way that they look. And some of those original figures from Age of Extinction are not the best at representing those characters and how they appeared on screen. And the leader class Age of Extinction Grimlock was fantastic. It was one of the first figures in the Studio Series line, and they nailed it. They nailed it right out of the gate. And now here we are a few years later, and they haven't done any more of the studios or of the Bayverse Dinobots. And in a span of a year, we've had 3 G1 Dinobots, which I love. I love Grimlock, Slug, and Sludge. And I'm sure Snarl and Swoop are on their way. But as someone who is a Bay fan, Bay design fan, I grew up with the Bay films, so I have nostalgia for the Bay films. Whether they're the greatest films or not, that's not the conversation I'm having now. It's a conversation we could have later, for sure. But I'm a sucker for the designs. I love the designs. It stings a little bit that they've got 3 G1 dinos so far, and they've only stuck to Grimlock from the movies, when I think Scorn could use a fantastic update. I think Slug from that movie and Strafe could use a great update as well. So it hit the Dinobots. I think that'd be neat. Obviously, there's some other characters now that haven't been hit yet. I don't think they're ever going to touch Skids and Mudflap. I honestly would want them to, just so that we can complete that Revenge of the Fallen cast list. And maybe they could try to recreate the ice cream truck toy from many, many years ago. I understand if they don't want to hit that because it's touchy characters, but yeah. So first things first, wrap up some of these Bayverse ties, especially if you're going to start leaning away from the Bayverse figures stuff. Wrap up some of these loose ends that we have, because finish that up and then move on and evolve Studio Series from there. Or maybe they're just trying to evolve it a little bit, and then they'll have a Bayverse figure every once in a while to bring the Bayverse people back in, but who knows. And that leads into the second thing that I think they could do with Studio Series, is I think they could expand from just the Bay films into the expanded Bayverse canon. And by that, I mean you could touch the Bayverse tie-in games. There were some great... we've already kind of seen that in the way of... recently Sideways came out, and he never had a weapon in the movie, but he did in the tie-in game because he featured a lot more in that game. And the Studio Series figure of him had that weapon from the game come with the figure. So they've kind of dipped their toes into the water of the tie-in Bayverse games. But there's some really neat designs from those games that I think you could pull off. There's a Shockwave from the first one that is kind of really interesting to try to tackle. I think there was a Warpath or something later down that line. Who was that one? Driftaway, something like that. He had a figure in Revenge of the Fallen that was really well regarded from what I remember, the toy line. But you could do, characters like that. You could touch the characters from the comics. You could touch from the Bayverse tie-in comics. And then you could maybe hit the ones that were from the original toy line that maybe they were featured in the comics once or twice and then they popped up in the toy line, or maybe they were created just for the toy line. Touch some of those aspects too. That can kind of wrangle the Bay thing. You're still touching the Bay aesthetic, but you're going off this expanded media, which I think could be a really neat way to do it, obviously. Also, make another ejector. The household bots from Revenge of the Fallen, those could be fun to tackle at some point. Maybe even in core class, get that to work. And what was the other one I was going to say about Bayverse? Protoforms. I think protoforms and Cybertronian forms, interesting concept to maybe try to revisit in Studio Series, since they haven't revisited that concept in a while. Obviously, we got the Cybertronian versions of all the Bumblebee movie characters, but I'm talking like the Bay versions of those characters, which are tough. Those are tough to tackle, so I'm not sure they would ever get to that. So that's what you can do if you want to keep in line with the Bay stuff. The other thing, kind of in expanded Bay media as well, they repainted the Leader Class Dark of the Moon Megatron and sold it for a while exclusively at Universal Studios. Shout out to this shirt that I'm wearing. Exclusively at Universal Studios, and it was the As Seen in the Parks Megatron, because he has a very Dark of the Moon design, but he's kind of the all-chromatic gray that you see in the first movie. And so they repainted him, and that made a lot of sense. And I thought that was really cool because I am a huge fan of Universal Theme Park and of the Transformers ride at Universal Studios. So I thought, why don't we have a Studio Series evac yet? They could even make him, same thing they did with Megatron. If you make him a timed exclusive at the park for maybe a year or so, then you can throw him at GameStop or whatever else after that. But I think it'd be really cool to feature that character in Studio Series because he has an original toy, but I feel like they could do better with evac overall. So keeping that in the expanded Bay canon, there's that. You can definitely go some of those routes. Obviously, there's Studio Series 86 still that they are hitting. I would have to sit down and figure out, I don't know how many characters exactly from the movie are left to be touched in 86. So I feel like 86 might be kind of also in its waning phase. But one I think they could absolutely tackle is Devastator. One, partially because I never got Combiner Wars Devastator through a lot of series of events of when I would go to Toys R Us, because that was the only place I could find them available, because I was like 15 or 16 at the time and didn't have the ability to go on Big Bad Toy Store yet. Every time I'd go to Toys R Us try to find Devastator, they would have him and I wouldn't have the money to get him. Or B, it would be right after I got paid for my job and I did have the money to get him and they didn't have him. So I never got around to getting Combiner Wars Devastator. And now that we've seen, Legacy is touching Menasor, I think Studio Series 86 Devastator could be a cool way to go to get a new updated version of Devastator. And I think Revenge of the Fallen Devastator turned out really, really well. So why not give us another Devastator in that toy line? Obviously, I'd love to see Sludge and Swoop, or Snarl and Swoop finally make their way into the toy line. I think they've been leaked or rumored as well. And another character I think that you could tackle in 86, even though he had a fairly recent figure in Siege, is Springer, because there's something about Springer's toy design that doesn't really... he's hiding behind Blaster here. It doesn't seem like it fits in very well with the rest of what they were going with the 86 stuff and the stuff that was in Earthrising Kingdom that do all kind of match. Maybe it's the battle damage of him that makes him feel a little off, but I feel like the model for Springer isn't right. Something's not there. So I feel like they could try to tackle Springer again to make him fit in a little more with the aesthetic of the rest of the 86 bots. I mean, they did it with RC, so why not do it with Springer? Keep the tapes coming. I think Frenzy, Rumble, whichever one they called him. I'm always used to the blue one being Frenzy. I'm a Frenzy as blue, Rumble as red guy. He looks pretty neat, and I think they could obviously, Blaster had his tapes featured in the movie, so you could do more of those, do the rest of Sound Waves, obviously, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think. There's not many more characters. They're doing Ironhide and Ratchet, obviously. Now we've seen, even though they were in the movie for a couple seconds, we got HasLab Unicron, other major character. We got the Quintessons and stuff the past couple of years too. So I think the 86 movie is starting to round itself out. Obviously, if there's any characters from the 86 movie that you want to be in Studio Series, let me know down below too. And then that moves us into the world of games, right? What kind of things do I want to see out of the War for Cybertron stuff, right? A lot. I want to see most everything come from that, because I love War for Cybertron. I love Fall of Cybertron. The old figures are great. Some of them still hold up fairly well, but the one group that I want to be made, obviously, I've been talking a lot about Dinobots in this video. But if they're making War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron figures in Studio Series, we need those Dinobots, right? Because part of me wants to get the Planet X versions. I've never bought a third-party figure before, but the Planet X stuff looks really, really solid to me, because first of all, I love Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron, like I keep saying, and I just want more toys of those designs. And for a while, Planet X has been the only one that's been cranking stuff out. But if Hasbro's going to start cranking stuff out, I'm going to go that route and support that instead, because that lets them know we want to see more of that in the line. And if they can tackle the Dinobots, that would be great, because then I don't have to drop a lot of money on the Planet X ones. But I love those designs, right? And besides the Dinobots, give me the Insecticons. Give me Bruticus. I so desperately want a Bruticus, because the original one, not the best. That was still when they were kind of working out the combiner kinks, but they figured out a lot more about combiners in the past 10 years since they've made the Fall of Cybertron Bruticus figures. And so I think a new Bruticus from Fall of Cybertron could be very, very well executed in the Studio Series. Obviously, they're bringing us, like I said up top, the leaks have shown that we're going to be getting Bumblebee and Barricade, Prime and Megatron, who are all great and I think are fantastic molds to make for those characters, because those character designs all rock. But obviously, later down the line, I'd love to see Ironhide, I'd love to see Ratchet, I'd love to see Sideswipe, Jazz, because the Sideswipe and Jazz original Fall of Cybertron figures also aren't the best. Those ones would be great. I think I mentioned already the Insecticons would be so cool to see that group. The Seekers also, I like the original ones a lot, but that's a great design that could be retackled as well too. Jetfire would be super cool. I've always liked that Jetfire design too, overall. So there's just a lot of possibilities going on in the Studio Series, and the War for Cybertron leaks get me really excited. I hope we learn more about those upcoming this week at PulseCon, and if this video goes up after PulseCon, then I'm sure we've heard about it by now. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, so that's about all I've got to say for what the future of Studio Series could hold. Like I said up top, go ahead and comment down below. Let me know what you guys want to see out of Studio Series as well. Do you agree kind of with the stuff I want to see? Is there anything else that I might have missed that you think that could fit under the Studio Series banner? Because I'd love to hear what you guys think about what you guys want to see out of Studio Series as well. So that's about all I've got for right now, guys. Nice, chill little conversational video. And if you liked it and you want to see more little conversation videos like this, go ahead and let me know down below, because this was actually a lot of fun for me to make. Just kind of rambling to the camera for however long it ends up being. So if you made it all the way to the end, thank you for sticking all the way to the end. I appreciate it a whole lot. As always, I've been your host, Deceptive9. I'll see you guys later.